Glenn.
Let's go.
Conversations with THEM2. Voice of the people, the crew for you.
Culture, creativity, knowledge, hope, opportunity, bring the light of lives. We shine, we break on through. Conversations with them too. Culture, creativity, knowledge, hope, opportunity. Your voice matters, your gift shine through. Conversations with them too.
Yeah. You are the stage. Shine.
Yo, family, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another powerful edition of Conversations with Them Two. I'm your boy MJ, and
I am Lady Des. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for what promises to be an honest, transparent, thought-provoking, and life-changing conversation. Now, but before we begin, we want to acknowledge that throughout the month of June, we are intentionally, y'all listen to this, we are intentionally focusing on and honoring our men, okay? That's intentional. This month-long initiative is called Kings Among Us, recognizing men who lead, serve, mentor, and inspire. We are celebrating fathers, husbands, sons, brothers, pastors, coaches, entrepreneurs, community leaders, mentors, and everyday men who are making a positive impact wherever God has placed them. Wherever He has planted them, we are honoring them.
you finished?
I am finished.
Are you sure?
Yes.
All right, family, we want to be clear. We're not saying that these men are perfect, because none of us are. But what we are doing is recognizing men who continue to show up despite the challenges, responsibilities, disappointments, setbacks, pressures, things that everyday men go through. So today we're talking about our unsung heroes, our very own kings amongst us.
Yes. And you know what, MJ? Far too often society celebrates what men do, but rarely asks, how are they doing, right? Men are often expected to carry the weight of the families, careers, ministries, finances, life challenges without ever showing a sign of struggle. But tonight, we are asking a different question. We're asking, who helps the man who's hurting? Who's carrying the man who carries everybody else? Who checks on the strong man? Who gives him permission to heal? Who picks him up when he's always used to picking up everybody else slack? So these are the questions that we're going to be asking tonight.
So that's why tonight's conversation is entitled Men Need Healing Too. It's all about breaking the stigma surrounding men's emotional and spiritual wounds. For generations, men have been taught to be strong, be silent, self-sufficient. And many of us learned how to survive, but never learned how to heal. And tonight, we're going to create a space for healing if Des will let us get it out.
What you mean if I let you? I am. So listen, everybody, joining us tonight is a man who understands the importance of growth and who has grown. Restoration is what I meant to say. Purpose and healing. Please help us welcome my friend, our special guest tonight, Mr. Glenn Jackson. How you doing, Glenn?
Doing good. Thank you for inviting me to the
Thank you for joining us tonight for this powerful conversation.
Thank you. I'm excited about it. Excited to join the conversation.
Okay, now I warned you on the phone call, just don't pay attention to, the shenanigans that's going on, because, there are definitely shenanigans. But what we're going to do,
don't be a distraction to them.
There you go. So what we're going to do, though, is we're going to begin tonight's conversation with a key question. And that question to you, Glenn, is how do men heal from rejection, disappointment, and say past trauma?
Brother MJ, I don't know. I don't want to be a distraction, but you're coming through kind of low on my end, and I can't.
Coming through low. All right, all right, all right. How about now?
I'm still stuck. Okay.
All right, Des, I'm gonna go back out and come back in.
Okay. So listen, everybody who's tuning in, we are talking to Mr. Glenn Jackson, and our conversation is tonight, men need healing too, breaking the stigma surrounding men's emotional and spiritual wounds. And like I said earlier, men go through so much. A lot of time we focus on what men do, but we're not asking them, how are they doing? So a lot of times men carry these weights around, carrying everybody else's issues and everybody else's problems. So we rarely ask them, how are you doing? We need to check in on them sometimes, because just because they're walking around, and they're carrying these weights and they look good, but a lot of times they're not good. They get beside themselves and they cry, or, however they let their frustrations out, that's what they do, right? But we want to catch them, because now it's a lot of mental ailments that's going on among our men, and especially our Black men. So we want to just make sure this is like a maintenance checkup on our men tonight. And I'm so glad that we have you here, Glenn. Just take a moment, since MJ is back, just take a moment to tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your background.
All right. Well, I'm 39 this year in September. I am a father of 3, 2 boys and 1 girl. I think I went to school for psychology. I did my undergrad in psychology. My concentration was counseling. I'm finishing up now a master's degree in divinity, and I'm hopeful to start a doctoral pursuit pretty soon. In theology. I think when it comes down to the male experience, I think I'm pretty qualified to talk about that, especially the Black male experience in America. But it's I don't know. I don't really know too much about how to toot my own horn, but I am excited to get into these questions. I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say, and hopefully I can say something that somebody who's listening can glean from, because I've been through and I have come out on the other side.
Awesome.
That restoration you were talking about, I can really identify with that. So, yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited.
All right, Mr. Excitement. How's this for you? Can you hear me now?
Man, I can't hear you, MJ. I'm sorry, man.
But you know what, Glenn, I really think it's on your side, because you're coming through choppy. I don't know if you're hearing it that way, MJ, that he's coming through choppy. So try just going out and coming back in, Glenn.
Try that right now.
Yeah, that could be it.
Let me see.
See if that works, and then just log back in.
Well, with that being said, Lady Des.
Yes.
Ooh, you hear me clearly.
I can hear you clearly. I sure can.
Wonderful, wonderful. So let's talk a little bit about your day.
I had an eventful day, but it turned out to be a testimony of God's power. Thank God, it's not what we thought it was. But I've been at the hospital all day with a family member. So I'm just grateful that everything, it's still not in the clear, but everything worked out better than what we not, I wouldn't say expected, but what they thought it was, it wasn't. Thank God.
And we were doing a wellness check on you, right?
Yes,
Right,
yes. So
right.
I'm grateful. See, listen, I'm grateful for my village. I am. I am sincerely grateful for my village, and I didn't get around to calling everybody because it was just a lot going on.
I bet you ate though. Okay, never mind. Glenn, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we can hear you better. I thought that would work.
All right, family, let's kick this thing off. Glenn, let's start off with tonight's key question. And
Yeah.
that question is, how do men heal from rejection, disappointment, and past trauma?
Oh, how do men heal from rejection, disappointments, and past trauma? Oh, wow. I think a key aspect of any type of healing comes with a certain level of reconciliation with whatever it is that has brought a person to the crossroads that they're in. And by reconciliation, I mean coming to grips with why you got there, how you got there, what personal, choices were made to bring you to that point, but then also trying to figure out how to move forward from that. Um, Man, getting past those things, understanding that, you know, mistakes are going to be made. Being comfortable with being the one who may make a mistake, understanding that just because you make a choice that brings you to a certain point, it doesn't have to define you. It doesn't have to
Mhm.
define your life. It doesn't have to, you know, you don't have to identify with whatever brought you to that disappointment or that trauma or whatever the case may be. But reconciling with it, understanding that it's a part of you, part of your past or your present, but it doesn't have to be your future. Um, I think that's a good place to start.
I agree, Glenn,
Talk to me.
because you have to be honest with yourself in order to just begin, like you said,
Absolutely.
being accountable for your actions. So why do you think so many men struggle with admitting that they are hurting?
Well, you just used the word right there. Accountability. There's a lack of accountability, especially nowadays in our culture, particularly in our context. There's not a lot of men holding other men accountable. It's pretty
Right.
much,
I
you
agree.
thing, I'll do mine, dog eat dog type of world. As long as you don't interfere with what I got going on, as long as it stays over there, it'll stay over there. But I think we lost a sense of accountability. Like just being able to go to a man going to another man and say, hey, you know what, you tripping. That's probably not what you ought to be doing. And if nobody's telling you different, let me be the one to say, hey, you're my brother. I want to see you do better. And I don't think I'm seeing that from you right now. So yeah, I think accountability is a big, big thing, and it's something
Yeah,
that really lacking. Yeah.
I agree. I agree. MJ, let me ask you as well, as far as, do you feel that enough men are holding other men accountable? Because you're one, I'm telling you, you one that will hold somebody accountable and be like, hey, this ain't right and I don't like it. So is it that free with other men? Because I heard what Glenn said, but I think
Oh,
sometimes, being vulnerable or allowing yourself to be vulnerable, is, men has been taught in society that that's a weakness. So What's your thoughts?
Well, definitely, in order for you to become vulnerable and to be accountable to your circle, first of all, you have to make sure that these are people that you have a relationship with. You can't just walk up to any dude and be like, "Hey, yo, you can do that," but in a society that we live in today, it's not very well recommended. I would say if you're going to make sure you hold somebody accountable, a lot of us have accountability partners first and foremost. So once you have that circle and that circle of trust, so to say, then it becomes a little bit easier to hold your brother accountable.
I
Okay.
agree. I agree. I agree. But if that person is not my brother per se, am I to turn the other cheek or to look the other way when I can clearly see that there's a issue there or a concern. I think that's part of the struggle. That's part of
Mhm.
because we're good with with our own, we're good with our own circles, but man, listen, even in our own circles, sometimes we're not holding each other accountable.
Right.
Like even in our own family circles, we're not really holding each other accountable. But if you do have people in your life that can be like what you said, MJ, that accountability partner, not even just you having to identify them as that, but somebody that's willing to take on that role, I think that community has a better chance than a community that says, you know what, you know, if it's not in my house or a part of my circle, why should I be worried about it? Because we all know, you know, that's the human way. If it's thousands of miles away, it's not really our concern until it hits our front door, and then it becomes a big concern for us. But somebody said it in a quote. I don't know. Maybe it was Martin Luther King. Some about inequality or injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, or something like that. It doesn't have to be when it creeps up at your front door that it becomes an issue. And I wholeheartedly feel like I'm the type of person that I've never really met a stranger. I
Mhm.
like to communicate and I like to talk. And I truly feel like, if anybody's willing to listen, then there's advice that can be given. So, I mean, I don't have to know you personally to be able to give some advice to you about maybe where I've been or where I can see a situation that you're in going, you know. But I do agree that accountability partners is a great place to start. People who have the courage and the discipline to hold another accountable for their actions, not in a mean way, but or in a condescending way, but in a way that says, "I know you. I know you can do better. I can see that you're falling off. Let's talk about how to get back on the right track."
Absolutely.
I the better part of the first half of my life, I didn't have that. I don't know what that looked like. But now that I do have those type of people in my life, um, and they haven't identified themselves as such, just brothers who have a unique desire to see me as a brother excel and do better. And when they see me falling off, they quick to say, you know what, you tripping. You need to, go pray, go do something. But you got to get back right because it's not looking right. That's all I'm
MJ, were you gonna say something? I see your facial expression.
No. I totally agree with Glenn. I think basically the point I was making is that it's okay to encounter people that you don't know. However, I just feel like in the society that we're in today, you just have to not approach with caution, but just approach with kid gloves and speak delicately, because these days, not just, everybody's on edge about something, and just a simple hi these days push people over the edge. So when we deal with and talk about men and mental health and dealing with traumas, it's those little things that need to be broken down before we can build them up. And sometimes even a hello, that can be the conduit to breaking the chain. However, some of us are not really receptive to, it's just one of those things that how society has made us.
Yeah, you're right, and I feel that everybody can't do it. I think it's, and with knowing how to reach people and deal with people, I do believe that it's a gift. And my thing is, you have some that can reach out but won't.
Yeah.
You have some that can say something because you have the influence, and they won't do it. And that's a problem for me. But going back to what you were saying, MJ, I don't think everybody has it, because you have some people that will confront you, but confront it in the wrong manner, with the wrong tone, with the wrong attitude, and what you try to do to help, because you're like, all I'm trying to do is help. But how it was done, how it was said, caused a reaction that nobody wanted. You understand what I'm saying? So we just really have to use wisdom when we approach people, and especially men. I always felt that there's a certain way you deal with men, and how you speak to men, man to man, and even woman to man. You just got to be wise on how you address a man. That's just my thoughts. So why are some signs that a man is carrying? What are some signs? Let me say that. What are some signs that a man is carrying unresolved trauma?
Cool. Oh man, you can look at his motivations in life, And I think unresolved, trauma is trauma. And a traumatic experience is it's a traumatic experience. It'll always be part of who you are, especially if you go through it and come out on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there's a way to resolve trauma as opposed to addressing it. Some trauma may never be resolved. There's a death of a loved one may be something that you never get over. But you can address it. You can address it. Try to find a way through it. And I think that much of the trauma that lingers is trauma that's never addressed. It's never addressed. And it goes back to culture, society, context. I don't know what it is, but I guess men are supposed to represent the strength of a society or a community, and regardless of what weight is placed on their shoulders, they should be able to bear it. That's like the unwritten, unstated rule or whatever. But the reality is, a man is just as human as a woman, and everybody goes through. Everyone who goes through a traumatic experience, if they don't completely and fully understand why it happened, how it happened, and maybe even understand that their past or their history or whatever the case may be, they can start making choices and decisions from that unaddressed place. men who grow up in households where, you know, there's a lot of abuse and stuff like that, if that abuse is never addressed, maybe it never gets resolved. You know, maybe they see the abuse until they decide to leave the house or whatever the case may be. But if it's never addressed, you know, some men can start making choices that reflect what it is that they saw growing up. You know what I mean? Like, go ahead, Doc.
Let's talk about that for a little bit, because like you said, you know, when we don't address some of those issues, we tend to not only continue reliving it, but a
Uh-huh.
lot of times we pass those down to our children, and then, you know, they think it's normal and they pass it down to their children. So how can we break that chain to affecting future generations?
Phew. By sitting down and having a conversation. Um, but before you can start to try to help a future generation, you gotta address your own. You know, you gotta
Right.
get that beam out of your eye before you can help somebody get the little piece of mulch that's in their own. And you have to revisit it. You know, you have to have the difficult conversation. You know, wherever it happened and with whomever it happened. You know, and those conversations are not comfortable all the time, but they are necessary. You know, and going back to another that same example of, you know, that abuse in the home. You know, if you don't address it where you saw it happening and with whom you saw it happening, you know, how can you really say that you got the tools and the proper learning to try to help somebody else with something that you refuse to address in your own circumstance? You know, I just see it as, before I can help my children to understand that it's not okay to, you know, take their anger out on their loved ones or their significant others, I gotta go back to where I first saw that happening at and address it with the people who I saw it happening with, to understand the dynamics. Because once we open up the conversation and once we begin to dig deeper, we begin to understand the complexities of the situation. And it's not saying that every traumatic experience is okay, or all trauma is trauma that can, you know, can be resolved. But if you're going to start somewhere, you have to start with the root. And you got to start with yourself. You got to start with the man or the woman in the mirror before you can try to address the man or the woman in the window, you know?
Speaking of the person in the window and in the mirror, we cannot see you right now. So I'm going to ask you, if you will, go out and come back in
Oh, man.
one more
Okay.
time.
All
Go out
right.
and come back in.
All
And
right.
while he does that, family, if you're just tuning in, it's Conversations with Them Two. I'm your boy MJ. She is,
Lady Des.
and we're speaking to the one and only Mr. Glenn Jackson, who's on his way to his PhD. And we're talking about men and men's health. You know, it's Men's Health Month. And a lot of times men carry the weight of 12,000 shoulders, but a lot of times you don't see it because society has built us up to believe and built us up to say, you know what? I'm strong. I don't cry. Men don't do X, Y, and Z. All of the while, behind those eyes are breaking down. So that's what we're talking about on this evening. It's all about men's mental health, how to achieve and overcome. And our special guest, he is back, is Mr. Glenn Jackson.
Yes. And, you know, both of you all said so many great things about, you know, the trauma and recognizing trauma, going to the next generation. And Glenn, I think you summed it up well by saying, we first got to get it out of our own eye. We got to get that beam out. And
Yes.
that was also a part of the first question, when we have to be honest with ourselves. There's a saying that little mean boys grow up to be mean men, and little mean girls grow up to be mean women. So if we don't resolve those issues at a very early state in our life, if we don't get healed at a very early state in our life, if we don't recognize these different traumas and what they look like, because some people think they're really dramatic, but if you have a whole lot of anger, emotional withdrawals, trust issues, fear of commitment, those type of things, if we ignore it, it just pretty much grows up in us, right?
And there's
Uh-huh.
one other thing too that we haven't addressed is that a lot of times when we are those mean people growing up and we go back to have that conversation with the people that we feel have made us X, Y, and Z or a certain type of way, we also have to be real cognizant that a lot of times that may be a one-way conversation, because
Absolutely.
although we're ready to open up and expose and move on, the person that caused us the pain, the hurt, the harm, the anger, and the danger may not be ready and willing to accept what it is that they did and the hurt that they caused. So a lot of times it comes with a lot of self-help, self-prayer, and self-motivation, because although we can only take an account for what it is that we do, we can only bring it to the person that may have brought it to us and caused it to us, but we can't make them accept, apologize, and move on.
And I think that's a part of the complexity of the conversation that Glenn was talking about as well, because it 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a one-way street, because they're not being honest with themselves about what they did to you, or they're justifying why they did what they did. And see, and these justifications and all of this of why I did what I did, or they just automatically say, hey, I didn't do it. They just lie about it, and they want it to go away. But you have to know, like you said, MJ, a lot of times these conversations are one way. But
Exactly.
you got to go in knowing, listen, I'm doing this for me. I'm
That's
doing
true.
it for freedom and healing for myself. Whether you admit it or not, whether you accept it or not, whether you want to be honest with me or not, I'm in a healing journey for myself. Because
And
9 times out of 10, you may never get a I'm sorry. You may never get the I did do it and I apologize. How can we heal, or how can we move forward? And it's something that you have to be okay with if you're willing to heal.
most definitely, because at that point, it may require professional help, because all of those things that you just mentioned is sometimes lead us to start to doubt, am I enough, am I valued, am I worthy, am I wanted, do you even care about me? We deal with a lot of those things, and those are things that men who feel defeated say about life's disappointments. So Glenn, we're gonna give it back to you now, because you're the expert.
Okay.
A lot of times rebuilding hurts.
Mm.
Very much so.
Yeah, and a lot of times we think that we're ready to deal with the rebuilding. A lot of times we're not ready to deal with the pain. Let's talk about that.
Well, man, rebuilding can be difficult. I'm in a rebuilding phase right now myself, and it's not been an easy thing, especially when you feel like something has been taken from you. But I can say this: the measure of what defines a man is not what he goes
Mm.
how he responds to those things. And rebuilding, I'm learning now, is another opportunity to get right what you got wrong the last time. There's nothing wrong with rebuilding, because storms come, and sometimes when those storms come, you realize that what you've been building in the first place has been, shaky ground. Maybe what you were building to begin with was not didn't have a solid foundation. But in the course of that coming down, or you lose it, or whatever the case may be, you understand more about yourself. I understood more about. I understand more now about the building process. I understand now if the foundation is solid, everything that's built on that foundation has the potential to last. So the rebuilding phase is an opportunity for you to catch your mistakes and to address them. The difficult part is, having to go through the whole demolition thing. If you're gonna have to rebuild something done got destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
And man, maybe the people that you were building with at the first are not with you to see you rebuild now. You have to find a new place to rebuild instead of trying to build up right where it fell down. And that can be the most tormenting things if you're not together spiritually.
Okay, I like this rebuilding question, because I'm thinking like how, like where do you begin? What does that demolition look like? And then how do you start building the blocks again? You know, and I like the fact what you said as far as sometimes you got to find a new location to build. Sometimes where you were before wasn't a solid foundation or solid enough where anything could be built. So I think for me, it would be like where do you start? Because especially when something has been snatched from you,
Yeah.
something comes so unexpected, different things. This demolition can happen any type of ways. So and once it happens, for me, it just left me standing like, okay, how do I start again? Where do I even begin? I think it was more of the how for me.
Well, I get you on that. For me, it was starting with me. I needed to become comfortable with who I am and who I was created to be. I needed to become okay with me first.
Mhm.
A lot of what I was building at the first was being built on other people's perception of me, and me trying to keep up with those perceptions. I felt like I was losing myself all the more, trying to keep up with this persona and making sure that, I'm being looked at by others the way that I feel like they ought to look at me, just trying to fit in, and not
Mhm.
okay.
Okay, Glenn, I hear you, but for all of those that are watching us, take us a little bit on that journey. How did you start to break down to begin to rebuild?
Man, well, I didn't start to break down anything. It started crumbling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Started
Mhm.
crumbling. Me realizing that, that the heaviness of perception was getting too weighty to bear. And the more and more I wanted to just be comfortable with who I am, and I wanted the people around me to be comfortable with who I am, the more that exposed what it was that I had surrounded myself by, you know. I learned that Glenn Jackson was created fearfully and wonderfully, and that if I'm okay for the one who created me, then I ought to be okay for anybody who has a desire to come into my life. You know, that was first and foremost. Instead of trying to be a different person to make those around me okay with me, I decided to just learn how to be comfortable in the skin that I'm in. You know, if I'm corny, I'm corny, you know, and it's okay. If I,
Mm-hmm.
if you know, I'd rather go to church than to a club, then that's okay. I don't have to be like everybody else to gain the approval of everybody else, because at the end of the day, you know, when I take my last breath, that's not gonna be able to hold any weight as to how I conducted myself with the few years that I'm here on this earth. So I started to say, you know what? I'm just gonna be comfortable with being me. I'm not going to overextend myself. I'm not gonna overexert myself just to fit the word I'm looking for. Just to fit in, you know,
To be accepted.
to be accepted. You know, I'm
Mm-hmm.
accepted already. And I had to learn that. You know, the fact that I'm here, living, breathing, and speaking to you guys is even more confirmation that I'm accepted already. But I lost myself trying to find acceptance in other things and in other people. And everything I had built up from trying to be accepted, that's what began to crumble. And I had a choice to, make. I had to decide if I wanted to just allow it to crumble or to try to hold it together with the little strength that I had. And honestly, I just sat back and I said, you know what, okay, God, if this is what you're doing, I'm not gonna say anything. I'm just gonna sit back and let you be the creator, and I'm going to find my solace, my comfortability in creation. And that's really how it took that turn, because once I started just being comfortable with me and just understanding that who I am is okay, I started to see that first of all, I started to see where I was going wrong, and I started to see myself, and I started to understand the decisions that I was making that led me to the point I was in. And I said, it's okay. It's done. I can't do anything about that, but I can start today trying to live and not just daily killing myself, man, trying to be something that I'm not. You know, behind those closed doors, like you said, behind those closed doors were tears. It was other struggles that I had brought upon, just trying to find ways to medicate, cope, and stuff like that with being who I was asked to be instead of just being who I was created to
You know what, Glenn? I think a lot of men, and not only men, a lot of people, um, they put forth this image like they got it like that, trying to be something that they're not. And I don't know if you remember, MJ, a while ago we did this series about love the skin that you're in. Be okay with whoever you are, whoever that is that God created you to be. And now another thing is when you realize who you are, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is where I'm supposed to be at. I'm not worried about image anymore. One of my guy friends said, you know what, Des? Men don't like rejection. They don't really know how to accept rejection. And maybe that's where the whole image and wanting to it be accepted come in, because if I'm not like this person, or I don't have what this person have, let me just pretend that I have it just to be accepted, because I don't want to be rejected. So my question is, how does rejection impact a man? And maybe we already answered that, because many men are rejected by parents, they're rejected by church members, employers, friends, and even society. So the whole idea is do what they want you to do just to be accepted. So how does that rejection impact a man and their decisions?
You're looking to be accepted, it can be devastating. If your whole thing is to be accepted in the circle that you're trying to get in, and that circle is rejecting you, that can be devastating, because you get those questions in your head, like MJ said, am I enough? What's wrong with me? But the way to counter that is to realize that you, like, I feel like I am the circle now. I'm the one that people should be trying to be friends. The circle that I'm in is the circle people should be trying to be in, because it's a circle of acceptance. Acceptance of who you are as a person. Like, if I got, and I tell my kids this too, like, you have to do anything or be anything to be a part of that, then it'll never work out, because the moment you get tired of doing that thing or being that person, you'll either find yourself leaving that circle or getting kicked out of it. So first, again, it goes all the way back to the man in the mirror. You got yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, is it really worth it? Like, is being a part of this crowd, being a part of this group, this following, this whatever, this church, this family, is it really worth me losing myself in the
Right.
And depending on what the answer is, you can pretty much determine how that's going to work out for you. But rejection, listen, if you live for the world's acceptance, you will die from its rejection, because
Yes,
the world, people are fickle. They'll love you today and they'll hate you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Especially with this internet thing we got going on. They love you today and hate you later on in the evening, depending on, what you say about their favorite whoever. So you got to make a choice. And it goes back to the man in the mirror, getting a good look at who you are in the mirror before you start out the window. That's the simplest way I say that.
Yeah, I agree with you, Glenn, because a lot of times when those rejections or the feeling of rejection go unresolved, you'll ruin great relationships, right? Because you'll have people around you that really love you, that really care for you, and because you've been rejected so much and not accepted, you'll automatically think that genuine people are rejecting you, and that's not the case, and then you kind of push the wrong people away, right? So when those unresolved issues of rejection go on, you have some men that just stop trusting, and they ruin great relationships. Like I said, they just stop trying, they let themselves go, because they still are in that struggle with who they are as far as their identity, because any little ounce of what they consider rejection, they'll just let themselves go. MJ, you're not agreeing?
No, I see it totally different. And I think you kind of know me a little bit. So when it comes to the rejection part, a lot of us deal with the rejection, acknowledge the pain, but then You know, like you said, when you know better, you do better. So if you realize or think that you're going to be hurt, a lot of times what you do is remove yourself from that circle, even if that means living in solitude, or being comfortable in solitude with being by yourself, you know, learning your own emotional awareness before you attempt to even let anybody else in or get close to you. So I think that is a major factor in
Yeah.
trying to rebuild and deal with rejection.
You know, but this is where I feel, MJ, where therapy comes in, because even if you move your circle, a lot of times the residue of how you felt, or what it was when you were rejected, causes you to build these walls, right? And when you go into newer grounds or newer relationships or newer people, sometimes those things linger. And any little sign of me, I feel that I'm being rejected, or I'm being done wrong, and that may not be the case. Sometimes that can block the relationship, because now you have these walls up of trust.
You ain't blocking a relationship. You just you making sure that you're accountable to yourself.
Really, MJ?
Thou shalt not hurt me.
Wait,
Amen.
no. Okay, so listen, we said that we're going to be real, right? Because
Uh-huh.
and I'm not directing this at you per se,
I lost
Well, you
but
better be
volume.
careful how you ask this question
you
then.
brought that up. You know, you are one that could build walls, or have those walls built. And I'm like, MJ, you don't have to do that. Like, we good. But but I get it though. I get it. I get it. Glenn, can you hear us? No, he couldn't hear. He can't hear us. But I get it. I see where you're coming from. But a lot of times, this is what I'm saying. These are the things that happens. They don't trust anybody.
So why don't we until Glenn gets back? Why don't we talk about how to break the unhealthy emotional cycles, because there's a couple of steps, you know.
Right. Right. They are, and then I just said one, how to break those the emotional cycles. I think therapy is
I don't
very.
know if you guys can hear me, but
There you
I
go.
can hear you.
I can't hear you guys. I've been going out and coming back in, trying to regain the audio.
You know what? You may be having issues with the Wi-Fi.
I'm gonna
Can you
try
hear
it
me?
again.
No, he
Okay.
can't hear
I'm gonna
nothing
try
you
to go out
saying.
again.
All right. Well, while he's doing that, you know, after you seek that wise counsel, whether it be a spiritual or professional, the next thing you want to do is build a healthy relationship, and you can start that with yourself. I say start with affirmations. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I am enough. I love me, even if I don't think you love me. I love me. You have to learn emotional awareness. You have to learn where your emotions are and where they lie. And for men, bruh, it's all right to shed a tear, but don't stay there.
Yes. Yeah.
And learn how to forgive. Just because you forgive don't mean you forget. A lot of times people think that because you forgive that you're supposed to forget. When you're human, when you are human, everybody is not God, everybody's not like God. We can forgive, but a lot of times that hurt and pain is a constant reminder. So you have to extend grace to yourself as well before you can commit to the healing process.
Yeah, you know what? I was going to say that, MJ, when you said about forgiveness, and a lot of times we just need to forgive ourselves,
Hmm.
uh, because a lot of times we have our own selves in a chokehold. We have our own selves held back, because we choose to be angry, or we choose not to forgive, or whatever the case may be. So I think, once we learn to forgive others, or even if we went to God for forgiveness, we have to be sure to understand that we have to give our own self grace, as well as forgive yourself. And don't be so hard on yourself, with the decisions you made, or the wrong choices, or the mistakes, or whatever the case may be.
Be hard on them. Don't be hard on you. Glenn, can you hear us?
I can hear you now. I heard all of that.
Oh my goodness. So I think, MJ, were you going to ask something else?
No, it's on you.
Okay. So Glenn, listen, to wrap this all up, and I know you've been having some technical issues, but to wrap this all up, what would you say to a man that is in that place where they're trying to rebuild? They feel that their world has crumbled. They may be married or was in a relationship that crumbled. They were on the job. They lost the job. They lost their children. What would you say to that man that is hurting right now?
Oh, man. You're not alone. That's number one. Though circumstances may make you feel like you're the only one going through it, you're not alone. And again, you know, we're not defined by what we go through. What defines us is how we go through. And so if you built before, you can build again. And then just focus on what the foundation is that you're building. For me, you know, I had to get back to my spiritual foundation. Spiritually, I had to come to knowledge and understanding that the way I was created was intentional, you know, and with all of my colorful personality, I was given that, you know, intentionally, and that is okay. You know, disappointments will happen because, you know, as humans, we put our stock and our treasures in earthly things, you know, and it's hard not to do that. You know, family, friends, accomplishments, you know, careers, whatever the case may be. But those things are not enough to sustain us. And so as long as we continue to put our stock in what we can acquire in this life, there's a pretty good chance of disappointment. But it's okay. You know, it's okay. You're not defined by what happened. You're defined by how you go through it. You know?
Absolutely. And I would just add too, brothers. Well, this is for anybody. You know, we are specializing in men's health and talking to the men, but this pertains to anybody that has gone through and that's going through. There is life after the pain.
Yes.
You can find peace after the pain.
Yes.
There has been a purpose, and there is purpose after you realize that disappointment, you know, and we want you to choose healing, choose growth. And after you do all of that, it's a release when you choose freedom, because then all of that has been weighing on you is no longer there. And I know Des, she's always got a charge for the men, and I just know that she has one on tonight.
Listen, I just want to say, MJ, first of all, Glenn, thank you so very much for your insight, your wisdom, and your knowledge, and taking us also through your journey. But to every man listening tonight, I just want you to know that your voice matters. Your story matters. You matter. Your presence matter. And most importantly, your healing matters.
Yeah.
So it's okay. It's okay to be different. It's okay to dare to be different. It's okay to accept exactly who God created you to be. And just know, like Glenn said, and the Bible says that you're fearfully and wonderfully made by God. And accept that. Stop trying to be like everybody else, because trust me, they trying to be like somebody.
That is so true.
If everybody be who God created you to be, you'll have so much more peace. And MJ said it, so much more freedom. So listen, your healing matters. If you need to talk to somebody, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to go and get help. Don't be afraid to talk to a therapist. Sometimes we just need people to hear us out. You don't have to carry this alone, and stop carrying this alone, okay? Because you're not God. And God said to cast all your cares, for He cares for you. So
Cares for us.
love my men. I love my Black men. I love all men. And we want you to be healthy because you're our kings. You're the kings among us. You're the kings that are walking this earth. And you are our head. You're the head. And, once the enemy gets the head, then the body is gone. So let us all be strategic about uplifting and praying for our men. I'm done, MJ.
It's funny that you mentioned that because talking about prayer before we leave tonight, we want to invite everybody to join us in something very special. Throughout this month of honoring men, we've began to launch the King Among Us. It's going to be a 7-day prayer challenge that we're asking men, women, families, churches, communities everywhere to intentionally just pray for the men in their lives, your brothers, your uncles, your fathers, your cousins, men everywhere carry pain and carry a lot of things that nobody else gets to see. So just pray for their, well, I'll let Des tell you what to pray for. Talk to me, Des.
Each day I will post a specific prayer target along with daily affirmations focused on the needs of men. So we're going to be like today, we were praying for mental health. Men that are going through a whole lot of stress and anxieties. We'll be praying for strength, healing, wisdom, protection, leadership, emotional wellness, mental health, spiritual growth, purpose and direction, and also identity, because we have a lot of men that is dealing, and Glenn said it tonight, that is dealing with the identity of who am I? Who is it that God created me to be? So we're going to just be praying for men, and we want to invite everybody throughout this 7-day journey. It started today. You pray at your own time and at your own leisure to say a word of prayer for the target prayer that is posted for that day. And even if you're not a man, you can speak those words of affirmation over that special man in your life.
And just know, family, we believe that there are kings among us. We know that there are men who are leading, men who are serving, men who are mentoring, sacrificing, and overcoming. And we definitely believe in the power of prayer. So if you could touch and agree with us and, just stop and just take a moment to pray for the men in your lives, because believe me, we need it.
Yes, yes. And listen, MJ, I'm here for it. I'm here to pray for you. I'm here to love on you, MJ. and Glenn. Yes, and you know me, Glenn. I mean, you know me, MJ. Glenn know me too, but you really know me, MJ. I believe in speaking life over you and over our men. I believe in speaking health over our men. I believe in speaking strength and purpose and peace and protection over our men. And if all of us come together and just really bombard heaven and believe, that's the key. We have to believe what we're speaking. We have to believe what we're saying in order for our faith to be activated. We may not, I don't care what you see, you may not see it. I'm telling y'all, don't get discouraged, because you never know. God will turn that thing around before you know it. You just got to believe God. Activate your faith and speak life over these men. Encourage them and continuously to pray without ceasing.
Believe that, because when men heal, families heal, and when families heal, communities heal, and when communities heal, generations can be transformed. Des, before we get out of here, Facebook chat. Hey, I just got my copy of You Are the Stage. Is there a time I can get you guys to autograph my book, please? Drop me in my DMs. Hit me in a DM, and we'll make sure you get your copy of You Are the Stage signed.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Kimberly. Wow. Okay. They still selling, MJ?
They still selling. All right, Des, I think it's time for us to get up out of here. Remember, healing is not a weakness. Healing is a strength. Join us each and every Monday night at 8 o'clock in the PM for Conversations with Them Two. I'm your boy, MJ, and she is
Lady Des.
Once again, thank you so much to our very special guest, Mr. Glenn Jackson, as we discussed men's health. And join us for the 7-day challenge. Remember, pray for men, encourage the men, support the men, and celebrate the men. So until next Monday at 8 o'clock in the PM, Des, get off the stage.
I'm going. Good night, everybody.
Peace.
God bless.